Good afternoon, everybody. I've got a few introductory remarks and then I'll be happy to take your questions. Today I've spoken with business leaders here in Auckland to hear first-hand the impact that the recent weather events have had on them and those who work for them. This afternoon I'm going to see the Student Volunteer Army, who are doing an incredible job helping those in flood-affected areas to clean up, and they're providing much-needed support. Yesterday, as you might be aware, I went to Mangere where I saw the work so many volunteers have been putting in alongside our government agencies to make sure everybody is getting the support that they need in order to get through these really unprecedented events. Auckland remains in a local state of emergency and there has been damage to a number of roads. The advice remains to avoid non-essential travel and to stay out of floodwaters and away from damaged areas. There is still more severe weather forecasts in areas such as the Coromandel, Bay of Plenty and East Cape, with an orange weather warning in effect, and more rain is expected here in Auckland. So today, to help with the huge clean-up effort ahead, we are standing up Enhanced Task Force Green. That makes funding available through the Ministry of Social Development and Employment to employ people in Auckland, Waikato, Coromandel, Northland and the Bay of Plenty regions who can help to get homes and properties back to the condition that they were in before these events took place. It funds skilled and semi-skilled and unskilled jobs for local people so that they can support our farmers, growers and communities by doing clean-up work. It sits alongside the other supports that have been made available, such as civil defence payments. There have been a number of those already. Those payments can be used to replace food, bedding, clothing, or they can go towards things like temporary accommodation. The flooding and storm damage in Northland, Auckland, Waikato and Bay of Plenty has now been classified as a medium-scale adverse event. Funding of $200,000 has been allocated to the rural support trusts who know their communities and the support that's required to help people through. And we know that the recent weather has come on top of what's already been a challenging and wet season for many in the upper North Island, and that their stresses have been compounded. So we know that many people are doing it tough, which is why the government is stepping up its efforts to contribute to the help. Today's announcements are on top of the more than $1 million that's already gone into the Mayoral Relief Fund and a lot of other support that's already been provided through civil defence, through council, emergency services, volunteers, iwi, utilities contractors, and of course those who have opened their homes to accommodate their whānau and friends who have been displaced. And I thank everybody for the efforts that they have put in. I'm happy to open up for questions. We'll be working closely with insurance companies. There's already been regular dialogue between the insurance sector and the Minister of Finance, who's leading this work on behalf of the government. We obviously want to see as many claims resolved as quickly as possible. We've seen the insurance companies on the ground already working hard to get those claims assessed quickly and to make sure that people can just get on with the job of cleaning out the damage so that they can actually start the rebuild process. We'll work with them to make sure that's done as quickly and as efficiently as possible. But we do have to acknowledge that particularly in areas where there are more complex claims and so on, it can take a while to work through that.
Would that include like any reimbursement that you're looking at through the insurance?
Haven't considered that at this point. It's only the first few days, but we'll work with them. We'll work with the insurance companies to make sure that they get what they need to be able to do the work that's ahead of them.
And with some of the work
MSD still have people that they're looking to place into work, and so they'll continue to work through that.
So
That is amongst the workforce that can be used. There may be workers who are displaced because of recent events as well, and so again there'll be opportunities there too. No, we haven't, but there is an ongoing process of looking at our immigration settings to see how we can improve and how we can meet the needs that are in front of us. Look, we know that we've got challenges with, if we think about retail and wholesale, stock loss continues to be a challenge. Underinsurance is a challenge for the business sector, and it's something that we've just been talking to business leaders about. That's a complex issue for government to step into, because we also don't want to become an insurer of by default, because that creates a whole nother set of issues. So we'll work our way through those sorts of issues carefully.
On that insurance point, what are those underinsured benefits you're asking for? Are they calling the state to step in?
Look, we'll continue to have conversations with them. I haven't, but the Minister of Finance has been up here too in the last few days, as you know, and he's been leading the conversations for us on that particular area. I haven't had a chance to touch base with him about exactly what the request is there.
And
Prime
just
Minister,
more,
a lot of people needing emergency accommodation right now, 400 turning up to the primary emergency centre every day. Where are these displaced people going to go and book something to be relocated at?
We are working with the accommodation sector, and that includes looking at things like motels as a stopgap measure while people's houses get dried out again and so on. We'll work with our accommodation providers, our emergency accommodation providers, the existing ones that we have, and we'll be looking, we are already, I believe, working with potential new providers to provide short-term temporary accommodation while we get things sorted.
We've seen problems arise in Rotorua where a lot of emergency housing got happening in one small area. How will these problems be avoided?
Look, I think in this particular case, in many cases, it will be genuinely quite short-term emergency accommodation while people's houses get dried out, and that kind of immediate work that needs to be done can be done. Where homes are, have relatively minor work that needs to be done, we may be able to get them back into their homes quite quickly. Where they're red-stickered and more significant work needs to be done, it may be longer. It may be that we can, there's no one-size-fits-all approach here. In some cases, people have got other places they can go. They can stay with extended family, or they can stay with friends. In other cases, they'll be looking for a short-term accommodation, whether it's in a motel. In other cases, other rental accommodation. We'll work through that on a case-by-case basis.
uninsured farmer, for uninsured farmer who's lost everything in white where they were already on, people taking finance to buy the contents of their homes and now nothing. Are you considering any hardship payments with
So civil defence payments are available now, right now in this immediate period, to deal with their immediate needs. So my request to those families is don't rush into anything. So make sure that you're accessing the support that's available right now to get you through, and talk to MSD and talk to the other support agencies who might be able to support you through that, including talking to your bank as well.
But beyond that, would you consider a helicopter, for example, or hardship?
Look, I'm not going to sort of make policy up on the fly. The main thing that we have to do right now is just support people through this immediate period. Of course, government is going to continue to look at how best we can support people whose lives have been turned upside down by the flooding. As you know, I don't go into the ruling in, ruling out game because I just think it's pointless. What I am saying...
It's not pointless because looking at it and
well, ruling things in and out when you're still in day 4 of responding to an emergency doesn't really give people anything that's useful. Government will continue to look at what support is required and how best we can meet that need. Yeah.
People will be before and will be tasked and how will this actually speed up kind of their recovery?
Through subsidising the wages of people, we can get more people on the ground, actually doing that basic clean-up work. So helping people to strip out their homes where they've been flooded, helping businesses to clear up the mess. We've got some military personnel on the ground now, and we've got more on the way as well. We've got our waste contractors. Waste is one of the big issues at the moment that central and local government are working together to make sure we get the best response possible. The last thing we want is new health hazards emerging because there's a whole lot of waste piling up in areas which creates new problems. So we'll make sure that we work together to get as much of that waste out of the way as we can so that people can then get on with the cleaning up job. So we went through this yesterday. The challenge with fuel tax is that for families who have fixed incomes and fixed travel costs, i.e. they have to drop their kids to school and they have to get to and from work. They have to go and fill their car up every day anyway. This eases some of the financial pressure on those families. And so there is no easy way to target additional support to only a narrow group of people. This provides support to everybody. And I would also go on and say that in terms of some of the other claims that I've seen about it, it does have an impact on other areas of inflation like food prices, for example. The transport and logistics sector will say that fuel is one of their biggest costs, and they pass that cost on to consumers in the form of higher food prices. So if we are helping to keep that cost down, then that flows through into lower prices in other areas. The advice that we have had is that the reduction in fuel tax is actually anti-inflationary. It actually keeps the inflation rate lower than it would otherwise be if we put those taxes straight back on again.
Why not something like
Fuel
petrol?
tax will have to come off at some point, though.
Well, inflation,
That itself will be inflation.
but inflation will also have to come down at some point, and that is certainly an area where we're very focused at the moment.
Why not
The climate change schools closed, where did that come from? Was that the Ministry of Education?
The local emergency management teams here made a request to the Ministry of Education to issue a directive for schools to close, which the Ministry of Education then acted on. That was reviewed on a daily basis, and then as soon as it was safe to give the all clear for schools to go back, that decision was taken. This is always a really difficult balance for the Ministry of Education, because on the one hand you've got schools who want some certainty around what dates they should plan towards, and parents want to know that too, but then on the other hand everybody wants kids back to school as quickly as possible.
Prime Minister, climate change and drinking water is one of the top priorities in my country, and money that we need to for them. So what is this help?
That the government's there to continue the conversation and to continue to speak and to listen. I'm expecting a really good conversation with iwi leaders. It will be my first opportunity to meet with them as Prime Minister. So it's an opportunity for them to get to know me a little bit and for me to get to know them as well. And I look forward to that discussion. Climate change continues to be a core priority for the government. The effects of climate change, as we can see here in Auckland, they are with us, and they are with us now. We need to keep working on that. Three Waters is actually part of that picture too. We've got to realise that we're going to see more of these extreme weather events. So things like stormwater and making sure that we're getting our infrastructure to the best state possible, that's actually going to be a part of our climate response too.
And what do you think of the future for Māori when it comes to co-governance?
Sorry, what was that?
And what do you think of the future for Māori when it comes to co-governance in regards to the Three Waters?
Look, one of the things that I've said right from the beginning is I think that a very broad question like that, co-governance is a very broad concept, and in different contexts it means different things. We've got some very successful co-governance arrangements in place right now. Many of them have come through the treaty settlement process. They're very successful, and I don't propose to change those. But when it comes to broader conversations, including around Three Waters, I want to make sure that we're bringing all New Zealanders with us in that conversation.
But do you think that because of that, Mamaia Mahi wants a position because of trade?
No, as I've indicated, Nanaia Mahuta had two kind of conflicting roles, one as Minister of Foreign Affairs and one as Minister of Local Government, both of which require extensive travel and extensive engagement, one internationally and one domestically. And I think we'd reached the point where we needed to reconnect more internationally, and that's where I want her focus to be.
Just on the Three Waters and
Yeah.
co-governance.
Rising electric plus as supply will our rent control being considered as an option there elsewhere to the possible price.
Not something I've looked at this point.
Just on the Three Waters and co-governance.
Whichever, you can choose.
Just on the Three Waters and co-governance, talking about how you want to communicate with your dad. So in plain language, what is co-governance in the Three Waters process?
Well, at the moment, it's a joint contribution to deciding who runs the Three Waters entities and what the overall strategy for that entity is. We haven't made decisions about what the future of that will be.
So
how many
co-governance distracted away from the real purpose of the Three Waters reform?
The Three Waters reforms came out of the fact that we have a massive infrastructural deficit, hundreds of billions of dollars worth of water infrastructure that is simply not coping with the level of demand. Whether that's fresh drinking water, whether it's wastewater, or whether it's stormwater, we've got hundreds of billions of dollars that's going to be required to bring them up to scratch in the next 30 years. If we don't reform the way we do it, the rates bill that households face will increase significantly. So I don't think that no reform is an option here. I think we do need to do reform. What we've got to do, though, is make sure that we're bringing people with us along the way.
How
You're
will
telling
you
me
do
to
that?
go to business.
Just want to go back to that meeting we had before, obviously things about insurance came up. What are the things that our businesses are asking for, and can you see more with, your reference to support businesses from spectrum type things?
Look, there was a broad, wide-ranging conversation that covered everything from communication, including making sure that we've got an exit plan for Auckland, so that once we're through the emergency response, we can get Auckland back on its feet as fast as possible, get people back out there spending money and really engaging within the Auckland community. How we can make sure that we're bringing people back into New Zealand again, that this doesn't set our tourism recovery back too much. We had those sorts of conversations. We had conversations, of course, about the issues that the business community have been raising with me since I became Prime Minister, around immigration, around labour shortages. They continue to be a major topic of conversation. It's an ongoing process. We'll continue to look at where the pressure points are, and we'll continue to try and make sure we're responding to that. I'm not going to make announcements on the spot. We'll keep looking at the concerns that are being raised. Yeah, and look, we're not going to necessarily do everything that business asks, but we'll certainly listen, and we'll certainly take on board the concerns that they're raising. We had a good meeting. We were predominantly talking about the floods and the response to the floods and how we can actually get through the next phase of that response. So it was very future focused. What are the pressing points right now? Where can central and local government work together? I reiterated to him that we are available to help. And he reiterated to me that we have provided him everything that he has asked for since this event began, and we'll continue to endeavour to do that. So we have to work together. I think Aucklanders expect to see us working together, and that's what we will do.
Did you speak about the initial response to the flood?
Common themes emerging that a lot of the changes could have been assessed and identified before they actually eventuated. Things like drainage issues or riparian trees, that kind of thing. These are council issues, but how will the new Minister of Auckland help to prevent these things?
In terms of many of those issues, you're right, they are local issues. On the issues around stormwater, for example, that is an integral part of the Three Waters reform program that we're talking about. We've got to make sure that our preparation for severe weather events is significantly better than it has been. So there's no question about that.
How is it that hundreds of people were stuck in this mountain without whose responsibility is that?
Well, it's an extreme weather event. When you have extreme weather events, it's not always easy to predict exactly what's going to happen.
Is that Nina? Did Nina identify that there was a fracture in the upper?
No, it's a locally led response. So it would be, in terms of that, how regardless of what the effect is, how we deal with the immediate issues in front of us, that response sits with the local response team, supported by NEMA.
Did that come up in your
No, it didn't.
Did your business initial response?
Look, we had a conversation about the last few days. Of course we did. But our real focus was on the future and on what's immediately in front of us and on keeping the response moving. All right, last question. Yeah. I haven't seen that particular case and generally don't tend to comment on judicial decisions.
The access to civil defence payment bond for a valid visa will often overstay or significant overstay.
Look, I've indicated that I'm going to look into the broader issues around overstays generally, and I'll certainly be including that as well. Very. I mean, I think as we head towards Waitangi weekend, it is an opportunity for us to celebrate our history, as well as remembering some of the parts of it that maybe leave a bit to be desired. Thanks very much, everybody.